The wah-wah was said to be invented by the Vox company in 1966 and was originally intended to simulate a trumpet player using a mute. It was achieved by modulating the mid-range tone circuit that was common in Vox amps. Although never popular with the trumpeting fraternity, popular guitarists of the day, Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix, made this a must-have effect for anyone who played guitar. The fact that Vox never patented their new invention led to many different wah pedals springing up, and whilst they all work in pretty much the same way, their tone differs. Probably the most well-known wah pedal is the Crybaby, and it is still available today in various different varieties, from Super Crybaby, Crybaby Fuzz Wah, Crybaby Classic, amongst others. All have slightly different tonal characteristics, and some include added distortion and adjustable tone sweep. So as mentioned, the Vox company claims to have invented the first wah pedal, and basically by taking a mid-boost pot or potentiometer from one of their Vox amps, they were able to put it in a pedal enclosure and modulating it using a pedal. So if you have a look on the screen here, basically you've got the pedal connected to this rod that is in turn connected to this little cog, which is connected to the potentiometer. And as the pedal is moved up and down, the little cog revolves and automatically turns the pot in the same way you would turn the tone knob on your guitar. So it's a pretty simple design, but it has such an effective sound. And you know, there's literally dozens and dozens of different types of wah pedals available today on the market, and they've all got their own different tonal characteristics, and their tone varies based on the type of pot used in the actual wah itself. So we're going to have a look at some different wah pedals. I've got a small selection of wahs here and have a look at how they vary and you know, how you can actually change some of the tone in those different wahs. There are two things that I look for in a wah pedal. First of all is the tone. Secondly is the travel. And the travel relates to the movement of the pedal from heel down to toe, basically the sweep of the pedal. Each wah sounds different. Each wah feels different. So it's a matter of getting the right combination between the tone you like and the travel feel that you like. This wah here is a Morley Bad Horsey 2, also known as a contour wah. This is actually the one that I use live. This is my preference as far as wahs go for several reasons. Not only is the tone great, but it also has a contour feature which allows me to alter the tone. So you can basically set, by using the switch here, you can turn the contour feature on, which allows me to set a second wah tone. And you can vary the contour, you can vary the volume, and basically it contours the mid-range sweep. So that's one of the really good features of this particular pedal. The second is that it doesn't have a conventional switch in the toe. Most wahs either have a switch on the side for turning on the wah, or the switch located underneath the toe, so you have to push down hard on the front of the wah to actually engage it. This wah has an optical switch inside, so as soon as you move the pedal, it triggers the optical switch and turns the wah on. This wah pedal is also spring-loaded, and there's not many around that are actually spring-loaded. So basically when you turn the wah on by moving the pedal, you take your foot off, it springs back into its fully heeled down position and turns off. So it's got, you know, several features that I particularly like in a wah pedal, but again, you know, it's a personal preference thing. So here we have the Boss V-Wah, and we had a little bit of a look at this pedal earlier with the Univibe, but what sets this wah apart from other conventional wahs is that it does have a variety of different wah models built into it. So it doesn't work like a conventional wah where it's got a wah pot. It's models of wah, so it's digital models of original wah pedals. So for instance, this has a Morley wah simulation, a Vox wah, a Crybaby, a bass wah, and you can even set a custom wah, which basically allows you to fine-tune the EQ and the Q setting of the tone of the wah. One thing that I don't really like about this wah pedal is the travel is not very wide, so you don't get a large sweep when you're wahing. But you know, again, getting back to personal preference, you may not mind that. you know, it might be an issue for you. This wah also has various distortion models in it. So you've got a drive knob, and you can vary the intensity of the distortion and the drive, and basically you can choose between fuzz distortions, metal zones, overdrives. There's about 6 or 7 different distortions built into this wah. So, you know, that's one to look for if you want a wide variety of different wahs. The first wah pedal I ever owned was a Dunlop Crybaby wah, and it was a fairly basic pedal in that it had no controls. You just basically turned it on and turned it off. But for me, I found that the tone was particularly sharp if I was using, you know, clean tones and I was in the fully toe down position. It had a really trebly sound about it, and it was probably a little bit too brittle for what I liked. So I'd always tend to, you know, play and avoid using the fully toe down position. And then I got to thinking, what if I could modify the tone pot? And there's a really simple modification that you can do at home to actually alter the tone of your standard Crybaby type wah. And we're going to have a look at it now. Before we go any further, a quick warning: please make sure that your pedal is not connected to mains power. Okay, we don't want to risk electric shock or death. You know, there's 2 very good reasons why you don't want to connect mains power or an adapter to your pedal. Now, chances are it'll be quite safe, but we don't want to take chances. So batteries are fine, but ensure that you totally unplug any mains from your pedal before you go messing around inside. Okay. With that said, we're going to open up our wah pedal, and basically it's got 4 different thumb screws. You may need to loosen them off with a Phillips head screwdriver, but let's go ahead and take off the cover. Okay, so we've got our cover off, and if you have a look inside, you can see the circuit board where your guitar leads are connected. You don't need to touch any of the circuit board, so steer away from the circuit board just in case you accidentally damage any of the circuitry. I don't want to be responsible for you damaging your wah by messing around with the circuit board. What we are particularly interested in is the potentiometer, or the pot. And as mentioned earlier, this works in the same way as a tone control on your guitar. So you can see here that the cog here connected to the pot is connected to this little rod that is serrated, and the rod is held in place by this little plastic block. Now what we need to do is get a Phillips head screwdriver, and we need to loosen that block off so that the arm is free moving. So go ahead and do that. Okay, so we've loosened off the screw. We don't need to take the screw fully out, we just need to loosen it off so that we can move the arm. But before we move the arm, I want to mark the cog so we know what position it's currently in. And then if something goes horribly wrong, you can basically return the wah back to how it was without any problem. So if you grab yourself just something like a white paint marker, and I'm just going to mark the cog by just there. I don't know whether you can see that, but I'm just basically drawing a white line straight across the top of the cog that basically represents the up position, the 12 o'clock position. So I know that if I need to return my wah back to its former state, that the white line needs to be in the 12 o'clock position. So with that said, you can go ahead and just move the arm block just slightly out of position so that the arm is free moving. Now, if you put a little pressure on the arm so that it stays in place, move the wah in its fully heel down position, so you're pulling it backwards, and you'll note that the white line moves just to the inset. Now, if we want to change the tone of the wah, basically we need to move that cog back another position. So I would recommend doing this in slow increments. So just go 1 notch at a time, put the arm back on and test the sound of the wah. So if I just basically pull the arm slightly back so that it's free of the cog, and then just turn the cog back just 1 notch. Now, if I push it back into its fully toe down position again, Might take a little bit of playing around just to get the serrated edge of the arm back in the notch. Now, you can see now that the 12 o'clock position of my white marker is basically one step back on the cog. So again, you can adjust this as much as you want, but I would recommend doing it in small amounts. Just test the wire, see what it sounds like before you go ahead and make big movements. But for me, I might just take it one more step back. And there we have it. So move your block back into position. Tighten your screw. And then as you rock your wire backwards and forwards, you'll notice that the position of the white marker stays where you want it. So test your wire from here and basically have a listen to how it sounds. I'm just going to pop this back together and then we'll have a quick listen. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is routing your wah into your rig. Now, for a traditional sounding pedal wah or auto wah, you'll generally have the wah placed before the preamp. This way, your preamp sound is then affecting the wah as it passes through it. If you place your wah at the end of the effects chain or after the preamp, you're basically going to have your wah working more like a filter, in that all the sound is coming into the wah and then the wah is modulating the sound of the effects like a filter in, say, dance music, where a DJ is tweaking a filter from low frequencies up to high. Well, a wah placed after the preamp will have that kind of effect. So we'll experiment a bit more with this as we move on into grouping more effects together, and you'll get a better idea of how the wah will have a bigger impact on the overall sound then.